I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Good morning. Grace and peace to you from the one who was and is to come. Amen. There are those who define human nature in stark contrast to animals. To be human is not to be an animal. And then there are those who consider themselves related to animals they both fear and admire, with whom they share a common origin and the destiny of death. Israel's sages belong to the latter. Their encounter with animals reveals the ability to negotiate familiarity and otherness, awe and threat, admiration and reserve. Their quest for wisdom includes the careful observation of the animal world. To study an animal is to look into a mirror and to like or dislike what one notices about oneself. Israel's wisdom tradition is full of such interspecies conversations, and its sages manage to strike the right balance between humor and faith. And we need both. If humor without faith is in danger of dissolving into cynicism and despair, faith without humor is in danger of turning into arrogance and intolerance. Israel's sages struck the right balance, but they did not mince their words. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. When last were you called lazy and asked to go and be taught by an ant? Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways, and be wise. The sages suggest 3 concrete steps. Firstly, you have to get up and go to the ant. Secondly, You have to get down on your knees and make time to watch it. Thirdly, you have to reflect on what you see and become wise. Note how this is not just an intellectual exercise, but it involves a field trip. According to Israel's sages, becoming wise is about choosing the right company. Mingle with the fools, and you yourself will become a fool. Mingle with the wise, and you yourself will become wise. Especially ants are thought of as a primary example, an epitome of wisdom. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways. The call to consider the ant's ways is ambiguous. It could refer to the actual paths ants take and make as they each follow their particular tasks. But in the wisdom tradition, the notion of the way also refers to one's basic lifestyle choices. There's a way of the wise and the righteous, and there's the way of the fool and wicked. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways. There's a laziness of thought, a thoughtlessness that comes with a certain arrogance and indifference. We consider ourselves to be the most powerful beings on earth, but the planet Earth would be better off without us. We've lost our way, our ability to live in harmony with nature and to respect the interconnectedness of all of life. We have chosen the ways of the fool and would do well to consider the ways of the ant. Here is the ant's approach to public infrastructure. We are not the only ones forming states, building cities, roads and bridges. We are not the only ones skilled in farming and storing. There is another species that has managed to conquer almost every corner of the earth. They have survived the dinosaurs, and they will probably also survive us. And while the earth would consider us dispensable, ants are absolutely indispensable. Without them, large ecosystems would collapse. Trees would be stripped bare by other insects. Soil would not receive enough ventilation, and nutrient cycles would collapse. Ants might be small, but they are extraordinary beings. Apparently, the weight of all the ants together equals the weight of all of humanity. But their weight does not weigh down our earth, but enables planet life to flourish. Their weighty contribution speaks of a gravitas that we seem to be lacking. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. There's not just a laziness of thought, a thoughtlessness that breeds arrogance and indifference. There's also a laziness of action, a passivity that speaks to our inability or resistance to being responsible and accountable. And the more power we have, the more we seem to stand the risk of abusing it for our own advantage. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. According to Israel's sages, ants represent the epitome of wisdom because they prove to be responsible and accountable without Big Brother watching them. The ant has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. What fascinates our spiritual ancestors and sages about these tiny creatures is that they do not seem to require anyone telling them what to do and how to do it. They also do not need anyone looking over their shoulders. They do not wait for an order and do not need to be commanded and supervised. They're active and proactive, committed to making sure that enough provisions are stored so that no one in their community goes hungry. Ants don't need the kind of commander known to the Israelites as military or civilian leaders. Ants also seem to be committed to do without the kind of overseers known to the Israelites as fellow Israelites tasked by Pharaoh to supervise forced labor. They also managed to do without the kind of overseers who, together with the elders, judges, and scribes, were meant to secure law and order in the land. Incidentally, in modern Hebrew, the word overseer is used to refer to the police. But there is no policing among ants. And finally, ants do not have a ruler or king who lords over them. They do not dream of a strong, heroic leader to show them the way. They manage without such projections of greatness and power. What fascinates Israel's sages is to see a community of beings where there is no identifiable hierarchy or governmental authority. And yet there is no chaos or breakdown of order. Discipline and community consensus are all that is needed. In some ways, ants realize the kind of utopia any well-meaning anarchist dreams about. And modern scientists seem to confirm what Israel's sages observe. Ants live together in complex, self-organized systems. Their collective behavior is the result of their interaction with each other and not of top-down instructions. The one we misleadingly call the queen does not rule or command, but is fully dedicated to giving birth to new offspring. We cannot discern any clear hierarchy. Everyone is just dedicated to their particular role, responding to their immediate environment and thereby fulfilling an essential function within a greater whole. The workers organize themselves and dedicate themselves to different tasks. Foster mothers take care of the queen's eggs. Domestic workers keep the anthill clean, destroy bacteria, remove the rubbish, and build new chambers and ventilation systems. Scouts look for food, and soldiers guard the entrances to the house. And to communicate, they use their vocabulary of fragrances and their feelers. For example, if an ant has found a new source of food, it will drum with its feelers on another one's head and then choke up a small teaser. Our vocabulary of smell is rather limited. We proverbially speak about smelling blood or smelling a rat. If only we would become better at smelling the common good. Among ants, we witness a selfless giving for the common good, for the well-being of all. Ants seem to practice a form of anarchy that works and does not create chaos and lawlessness. They seem to be able to do without state authorities to have to enforce law and order. Ants know how to use their freedom in the service of others. Their nature does not seem to be a site of struggle between forces of greed and forces of solidarity. Imagine a kingdom where we no longer need to hold people accountable. Imagine a kingdom where power is equally shared, truly empowering. Imagine a kingdom where everyone has everyone else's well-being at heart. It would be heaven on earth, not unlike the experience of sitting with Jesus around a table, with a host who has come to serve and not to be served, and where the last will be the first. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. What must have intrigued the sages is that one of the two central tasks attributed to the kingship in ancient Israel was successfully executed by ants without a commander, overseer, or ruler. It was the storage and provision of food. The sages probably have the grain ants in mind, known to scout for big amounts of corn on the threshing floor. They would take the grain down to their large underground nests. They know how to plan, to be proactive. In the summer, they begin to collect and store provisions for the winter. In antiquity, it was the ruler's task to exhibit such wisdom and foresight to guarantee the storage of food for times of drought and famine. This comes out most clearly in the story of Joseph in Egypt. His ascension to power and great success was due to his advice to Pharaoh to use times of abundance as an opportunity to store enough food for those times when drought and famine threatened the land. It was Joseph's foresight and wisdom that in the end also helped his own family to survive a devastating famine. But according to the sages, ants teach us that such foresight and wisdom should not be the sole responsibility of a king or ruler, but should rather be common practice among every member of society. And such foresight and wisdom should not have to be enforced by some external authority, but should be everyone's responsibility and second nature. To plan and act in a way that secures humanity's future has gained enormous urgency in the light of the present ecological crisis. Among ants, such responsibility is shared and not abdicated by expecting some higher authority to take charge. The sages expect us to show a similar commitment and assume responsibility for the future of our societies. The tone of their admonition is sarcastic, leading to a heated exchange. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. The sages compare the laziness of thought and action to a dangerous and irresponsible sleepiness. To them, it is the sleep of the ignorant and selfish who expect those in power to come to their rescue. Ants cannot afford such irresponsible behavior. There is no power above them to enforce and monitor compliance. The buck stops with every single one of them. But the sluggard does not seem to be aware of the seriousness and urgency of the situation, which calls for immediate action. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. The response sounds like a mantra, lulling oneself into blissful oblivion. It has the sleep-inducing quality of repetition for which lullabies are known. But the sages will not allow the sluggard to be lulled into a false sense of security. The imagery evoked is drastic and dramatic. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. The sages make us think about both the violence of poverty and the way scarcity can cause violence. Poverty is compared to a robbery or a situation of combat. The sluggard will be surprised in his or her sleep. To not assume responsibility and show solidarity leads to living conditions of scarcity that create constant stresses, which in turn cause aggressive behavior. 4 of the main causes of poverty are government corruption, lack of economic infrastructure, poor access to education, and poor access to health care. Such poverty, in combination with inequality and feelings of deprivation, are known to fuel crime and violence. Scientists warn us that future wars will not be fought over oil, but over water. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? To consider the wisdom of the ant is to look into the mirror and recognize both our smallness and our potential for greatness, our vulnerability and our potential for genuine solidarity. If God was willing to become a human being in Jesus to infuse us with new vision of equality and justice, should we not be willing to see the world through the eyes of the ant in order to be re-inspired by a fresh vision of solidarity and responsibility? Carl Gustav Jung once noted how Christians often ask why God does not speak to them as he is believed to have done in former days. Jung's response is telling. When I hear such questions, it always makes me think of the rabbi who asked how it could be that God often showed himself to people in the old days, whereas nowadays nobody ever sees him. The rabbi replied, nowadays there is no longer anybody who can bow low enough. According to Jung, such bowing low enough is about rediscovering how God speaks through dreams and visions. Israel's sages would add the importance of field trips and being willing to meet an ant at eye level. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. So as you go, God bless us with the kind of wisdom that crawls towards us and dawns upon us. Amen.
Stir me from plasidness, wind on the sea. You moved on the water, you called to the deep, then you coaxed up the mountains from the valleys of sleep, and over the you call to each thing, wake from your slumbers and rise on your wings. Spirit of gentleness, blow through the wilderness, calling and free. Spirit of restlessness, stir me from plasidness, wind on the sea. You sang in a stable, you cried from a hill, then you whispered in silence when the whole world was still, and down in the city you called once again when you blew through your people on the rush of the wind. Spirit